Welcome to the US Kiss Vinyl Reference YouTube channel. Please like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Alright folks, welcome back to another episode of the US Kiss Vinyl Reference. I am Mike Stone, your host, and today I have been reading the comments on my little Facebook post on the US Kiss Vinyl Reference page, and somebody had suggested listing like all of the first issue LPs, or how to tell if it's a first issue, and I think we're going to tackle that subject today. So I'm not going to be holding much up. I might grab something here and there, but I really don't think I need to. And we're going to talk about some labels and to see how you can figure out whether your LP is a first issue or a reissue. So I'll be back in a minute, and we'll get started on this. Alright folks, welcome back. Now, we are going to look at some labels today. So it's a little bit to take in, but once you kind of get in the groove of it, it's pretty easy to figure out. So this is going to... I'm probably going to touch on some of the company inner sleeves too while I'm at it. But I am just going up to the release for Alive 3, the original release today. So pretty much anything after that is a custom label, and that'll just ride out on its own. So the way I figured out how to figure out what was a first release or not, besides talking to other collectors when I was brand new, the easiest way to figure it out is to see what label the promotional copy is on. Most of the time that works out. There is an instance or two where the promotional copy's on a different label from the first release, so there is that. But that's what we did, was whatever the promotional copy's on, that's pretty much, you can't get much more first issue than that. So to start off, we're going to pull up, and I'm just going to drop images in. I'm not holding stuff up to the camera or nothing like that. That's just too much time to take it out and do that. So I've got labels that I've cleaned up, taken off the text, or just random labels that I threw up. So we're going to start off with the Casablanca blue label, number 1. These are terms that have been coined years ago, and it's just it's the language that I use, and many of my friends that also collect all this stuff. This is just a common language that we use to describe the labels, so we know what we're talking about. So before I get started on the first blue label, I'm going to point out that there are 3 different US blue labels from the 70s. The 4th one came in 2014, which we're not really going to touch on too much. So the first blue label, as you can see right here, the difference in these blue labels are all going to be down in the text at the bottom. So Down at the bottom, you see it says Casablanca Records Incorporated, manufactured and distributed by Warner Brothers Records Incorporated, made in USA. So, with that one, the easiest thing to look for is the Warner Brothers Records mention. You will only find the debut on this label. The catalog number will be NB9001, and it could have Kissin' Time on second, or it could not have Kissin' Time on side 2, or it could have Kissin' Time on side 2. There are versions of NB9001 that do have Kissin' Time on the label. So there's your blue label 1, and you're going to hear some clicking and all that because I've got stuff up here that I'm reading. So with that stretched from about January 1974 to about August of 1974. And then Casablanca lost their distribution through Warner Brothers, and they started distributing on their own. So they dropped Warner Brothers from their text on the lower part of the label, and we have a blue label number 2. So now notice it says manufactured and distributed by Casablanca Records Incorporated, made in USA. So no Warner Brothers mention. That's the key thing to look for. And you will find copies of the debut. The catalog number will be NBLP7001, so you got a reissue of the debut. And then first issues of Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, and Alive will be on this label. Alright. Now these first 2 labels that I showed you, the inner sleeve mostly will be a white inner sleeve. It could either have the hole in the center, like this one, or it could be a solid inner sleeve. Once you get to the period of late 1975, around the time when Alive come out, the inner sleeve could be, it could say the image is getting clearer on one side, and then you flip it over and it's a 12 back. It's got releases listed on the back, as you can see. So that's your inner sleeves for this first period of the first 4 albums. There'll be some kind of company sleeve. Alright. So, moving to the next label, we have a blue label number 3, and right here it is. Now you can see the text is quite a bit different. So it says manufactured and distributed by Casablanca Records Incorporated, 8255 Sunset Boulevard, Los Angeles, California, 90046, made in USA. So now you have a Sunset Boulevard address. So this one would have ran from about October of 1975 to May of 1976. Not a real long period. You'll find reissues of Kiss, the self-titled, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, and Alive. And then you will find first issues of Destroyer on this label. So there's the 3rd blue label. And now we are going to switch to the what we call the Camel label. So the first thing to pick up on is the desert scene. Well, before I get into this, you know, the inner sleeve for that 3rd blue label will be the same image as the Camel label, and it'll have a 12 back on the back with a few releases shown. So, alright, now moving forward to the Camel label. Sorry about that. Alright, so here's the Camel label. Now, the first thing you pick up on is the desert scene. There's a fortress in the background, 3 camels on the label. Pretty easy to spot. The Casablanca is just a Casablanca logo. It does not say Record and Filmworks. That won't come yet. The text at the bottom is pretty much going to stay the same for a little bit. Starting with the Blue Label 3, it's got that same text at the bottom. So this is what we call a Camel label. And it ran from May or June of 1976 to April or May of 1977. You'll find reissues of the first album, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, Alive, Destroyer, and then you'll find first issues of the originals and Rock and Roll Over. And get into 45s, that's a whole new can of worms with a Camel label. So, and then moving forward, Casablanca is now Casablanca Record and Filmworks. This label looks similar to the Camel label. You got the fortress in the background. There is a couple of camels, but there's a film crew there in the forefront of the picture. And also the Casablanca logo says Casablanca Record and Filmworks. So this one ran from about May of 1977 all the way up to October, November of 1981. So this one was there for a minute. It's got that same text down at the bottom. And what you'll find on this one is reissues of the first album, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, Alive, Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over. You'll find some copies of Love Gun with this label, without the band image on the label, and Alive 2. All right, so that leads into a couple of custom labels that are coming up. So first up is the Love Gun custom label. It looks just like a Filmworks label, except you got the band picture on there. So that is, for the most part, tied to a specific release. That's why it's called a custom label. Now, there are RCA Record Club copies that erroneously got used the Love Gun label for copies of the debut and Destroyer. Those were not intended, so that's why I say it was mostly tied to one release. Alright, so now the next custom label we have is Double Platinum, and you can see it's mainly a Filmworks label, but it's themed towards the whole platinum thing. It's a silver label and all this. That's tied to Double Platinum. There's no other releases with this custom label here. And then the next custom label is the 4 solo albums. So you got one with each member's face on the label. And then there are some copies of Gene, Peter, and Ace's solo album that do not have the face on the label. It's just a plain Filmworks label. No Paul has ever been seen like that yet, so, can't say it exists. Can't say it doesn't exist either. So, alright, so now we're going to splinter off the Filmworks label to a Filmworks label 1.5, which this ran from about April of 1979 up to May of November of 1981. So this Filmworks label number 1.5 is basically the same thing as a Filmworks label, but you'll find a plant number typed on there somewhere. So you see that 73 there. I've only found 2 Kiss records that have this 1.5 label, and that's Love Gun and Unmasked. Love Gun has a 53, or it actually has 2 53s down there by the text, and Unmasked has the 73 that's pictured here. And you might have noticed that I said it ran from 79 to 81, and I said the filmworks 1 label without the plant numbers ran from 77 to 81, so you know they ran together. And the reason why I say that is if you look at the Unmasked album during that time period, there are, you know, it's a custom label, it's not filmworks, but if you look at the Unmasked album, there are copies of that with a custom label that have plant numbers on it, and then there's a copy that doesn't. So that tells me that these ran side by side. That's why I call it a 1.5 instead of a filmworks 2, because they ran kind of in the same time period. Alright, next up you'll have a Dynasty custom label. It's just a label with the image from the poster. And then, you know, in the US it's only tied to Dynasty. Other countries used it for some reissues. Next up you have the Unmasked custom label. Again, it's a white label with the image of the poster at the top. You'll only find this in the US on Unmasked. As I was talking about before, you can find it with or without a plant number on it. And then you have next an Elder custom label. It's just got a hand on each side. That only applies to the Elder in US. Again, some other countries use that label for a couple of other releases. And then you have a Creatures custom label number 1. So with that, that's for the first issue of Creatures of the Night. You'll only find that label on first issue copies of Creatures of the Night. So that got us through a couple of custom labels there. And now we're going to do the filmworks label number 2, which ran from about November of 1981 to December of 1984. And there's a series that was pressed of the back catalog on this label. And the key to that series is, you know, you'll have the filmworks label, and it'll say manufactured and marketed by Polygram Records, 810 7th Avenue, New York, New York, 10019, and you'll have a plant number somewhere on the label for the most part. I think a couple of them don't have plant numbers. But on the back of the jacket, you should have a printing plant number of some sort. It'll be 501, 0501, 206, 0704, something like that. It could have a UPC sticker on it. I did an episode on this reissue series. It won't have a printed UPC on the jacket, so. And double platinum will not have a plant number on the jacket. I'm sorry for the confusion there, but for this series, I'd recommend going back and watching my episode on the reissues. So with this filmworks 2 series, you'll find reissues of the back catalog. So the self-titled, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, Alive, Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, Love Gun, Alive 2, Double Platinum, all 4 solo albums, Dynasty, Unmasked, and Creatures of the Night. You won't find an Elder with this kind of a label. Alright. And that brings us to the filmworks 3 series, which the label looks pretty much the same. It's got the same text at the bottom. You'll have a plant number somewhere on the label or not. The Polygram text is the important part of that. And the jacket will have a new Polygram catalog number somewhere on it. So the old Casablanca catalog numbers that start with an NBLP, they're gone. Polygram uses a big long numbered system. It's usually like a 422, 824 something. And then there'll be a printed barcode on the back of the jacket. So with this series, you'll find exactly the same as the other series. Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, Dress to Kill, Alive, Destroyer, Rock and Roll Over, Love Gun, Alive 2, Double Platinum, all 4 solo albums, Dynasty, Unmasked, and Creatures of the Night you'll find with this label. Again, no Elder. The Elder was not reissued up until 2014. So, and now we're done with the makeup period, and Kiss has moved over to Mercury records. You know, that's where Polygram put them. So we have a Mercury label #1 for purposes of Kiss collecting. This is a Mercury label #1. If you actually go back into Mercury's history, this is like the 8th or 9th iteration of the Mercury label. But for Kiss collecting purposes, this is a Mercury label #1. So it's a black label with a Mercury logo, 2 different Mercury logos at the top. For the most part, you will have a plant number somewhere on there. It'll have silver text. Down at the bottom, you got that same Polygram text, manufactured and marketed by Polygram Records Incorporated, 810 7th Avenue, New York, New York, 10019. All right. And this you can find Lick It Up, Animalize, Asylum, Crazy Nights, and Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits on this label. Then moving forward, you got a Mercury label #2, and as you can see, the print is quite a bit longer than the other one, and this one reads from right to left: manufactured and marketed by Polygram Records Incorporated, New York, New York. All rights reserved. Unauthorized copying, reproduction, hiring, lending, public performance, and broadcasting prohibited. Printed in USA. Again, you'll have silver text on here and a plant number for the most part. And the releases that you'll find on this one is Hot in the Shade, Revenge, and Alive 3. Alright. So then you get into a couple more custom labels. You have a custom label for Unplugged, and that's tied only to Unplugged. And then you get a custom label for You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best. Again, there's nothing else there. And then now I'm kind of just winging it. You get a second custom label for Creatures of the Night. So this would have popped up on the Glow in the Dark record, and it's just side 1, side 2 label for Creatures of the Night. You won't find another label on the Glow in the Dark record. You won't find that label on any other record. So there's that. And then pretty much from there on is just custom labels, and the labels don't really change up until 2014, which that's a whole different episode again. I've done an episode on that. So now we're going to learn a little bit about inner sleeves. I know I threw a couple in there, but just for the most part, I ignored them while I was going through these labels. So, inner sleeves, we're going to talk about the company sleeves, which is not your custom inner sleeves that would be tied to one release. So, you know, pretty much from Destroyer forward, they each had their own inner sleeve. So, starting with the debut album, you have a white inner sleeve. It could have a hole, might not have a hole. That one should pretty much run through the first album up until even some first issues of Alive. Now, many promo copies of Alive that I have seen and have had an inner sleeve that I'm putting up now. It's got the image is getting clearer on one side, and then it's got a 12 back on the other side. And that's called a 12 back. There's 12 releases on there. I have seen that come with promotional copies of Alive and some Blue Label 2 copies of the back catalog. So next up is what I call a Camel 12 back. So on the front, it's got the Camel label image, and then on the back there's a 12 back with releases of other artists. You'll find that with a Blue Label number 3 copies of Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, and Alive. And then there is another Camel label inner sleeve. It's got the same image on both sides. And you'll find this with Camel label copies of Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, and Alive. Alright. Next up is a Filmworks inner sleeve. It's got that Filmworks image on both sides. You'll find that on Filmworks label reissues of Kiss, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, and Alive. And then like the Filmworks 2 series from 1983 to 1984, you'll find that Filmworks inner sleeve in many of those. Double Platinum does not have Filmworks inner sleeves for the first issue. It's just a plain white sleeve. I forgot to add that one earlier. Alright. And then you get to the Filmworks 2 reissue series. Most of them come in clear plastic inner sleeves. The real cheap bastards that are hard to get in and out without just crinkling up. And pretty much from Destroyer forward, you have custom inner sleeves minus a few oddball releases. So that's the inner sleeves in a nutshell. And then for labels, that's pretty much it on them. And yeah, I didn't run too long this time. So, and for the most part with 45s, the labels kind of match up the same. I might go into that at a later time, but I might do something with 45s and company sleeves or something like that. So, but anyway, this is a nice short little video, so I appreciate you listening to me. And if I've confused anybody or if I overlooked something, I mean, somebody will tell me. But I think I hit the main points. So anyway, I'll let you get back to the rest of your day, and I will see you next time.